This is In-Camp Field Notes, quick conversations and the cliff notes, thoughts, and lessons that don't always make it to the big stories, but shape the way we hunt and seek outdoors. This is In-Camp Podcast.
All right. Welcome back to In-Camp Field Notes. I am on the line with Tyson Pottenger. If you don't know Tyson, you should, because you should know his dad, Troy, who is the scrape hunting machine. I'm sure you've heard him on a podcast. So good to have you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And anytime we get to talk whitetails is always a good day for the Pottenger boys.
Well, I mean, we were already talking about, what else you're doing with your labs, your shed hunting, you're hunting waterfowl, which is part of what this show is. I never wanted to just start like just a whitetail podcast.
Yeah.
Even though it's my favorite thing to do. I love deer hunting.
Yeah.
But, I'm trying to keep it like well-rounded, but I always am looking for somebody to talk to whitetails about, because it's got to be in at least once a month. I got to get them in there,
Yeah, you can't beat the whitey.
So what we're going to talk about on this Field Notes is part of what you've learned from your dad about scrapes, but how you've made it your own.
Yep.
So this is probably going to air sometime, like we just said, in March or April, when people are really starting to get back in the woods. So after the season ends, most of your hunting is done in Idaho. What is your first thing, your goal that you're setting when you're postseason scouting?
Yeah, I mean, for us and for me personally, I think like postseason scouting starts the day after season ends. So we're done around Christmas time in the states that we hunt up here in the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Idaho, Montana. And using the snow, I feel like, is one of the most underrated. And guys, after a long season, sometimes you're tired, you're beat down, you're wore out, and you don't want to get off your couch and get out there and put boots on the ground when you're not, when bucks are shedding antlers and stuff like that. And I really love to backtrack in the snow, and especially on if it's a deer that beat me during the season. I don't mind getting on his track, trying to find his track and backtracking him to find, more scrapes, more of his really community bedding area, that he likes to hang out in, whether that's around a bunch of deer or if it's off, tucked away in a corner. I have a lot of examples of backtracking a deer a week after the season, when you feel like, he kicked my butt this year. Like, I like getting on him right away and like, okay, you might have beat me this year, but I'm going to get on you right now when I can use the snow, because, we have a lot of snow out here in the mountains, and use that to our advantage to get another clue that might be just a small detail in the puzzle, or it might be, the piece that solves it, that gets him killed the next year. And we have, I found a buck that my dad ended up killing, that we were both hunting. I backtracked him 2 days after the season end and spent the whole day in the mountains in the snow, and found out where it was kind of an off the wall bedding area. And we found it and adjusted the next year and killed him off of it. So stuff like that right away is really what I like to do right after the season.
Yeah. So this is kind of an interesting perspective, because I got, the common answer is like, well, I'll find a piece of new or whatever and go, those are all good answers. But tracking a specific deer, because you guys are, you and your dad, your family is very good at looking for specific bucks.
Yep.
So do you do anything if you're saying you're following a buck's track? Are you picking his track because you recognize the track, or are you picking it because that's where he lives and that looks like a mature buck track? And then what are you doing to, this is kind of funny because this week I'm having somebody on from Onyx, and one of his suggestions was to literally turn your track on, follow a trail till it meets another one, follow another trail. Is that something that you're doing? What's the whole thing about tracking a buck?
Yeah, I mean, in I mean, every situation's different, right? So there's some situations where he's the only big deer in the area where you find his track, you know it's him. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? There's
Mm-hmm.
other situations where, there might be 3 or 4 big mature bucks living in that area, and yeah, you don't know exactly who it is, but when you've grown up doing it and have the woodsmanship to get on a big track, it's a big mature deer. And oftentimes in the mountains, especially, big mature deer relatively do similar things. I would say
Mm-hmm.
there's only so many places where they feel comfortable from the predators, from the pressure, um, and it can be very vast when you look at it from an onX view. But when you get on a deer and use those strategies, I think you can narrow them down as best as you can in the mountains. And for the onX part of that question, I am a big fan of running a tracker.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think sometimes it's nice to, after you do a 8-10 hour day in the woods of hiking around and doing all the in-person boots on the ground scouting, it's nice sometimes. I like to get back and look at those tracks, and it's almost like a Venn diagram sometimes, you know what I mean, where stuff kind of overlaps, doe bedding areas, big buck bedding area, travel corridors, trail systems, all that stuff. And a lot of times what you end up finding in the middle of that Venn diagram of the overlap is a big scrape.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen all the time, doesn't happen as much as people would think it would happen, but when you do find that gold mine scrape, it's like boom, it usually clicks, and you can look at it from a broad perspective and it makes sense when you do run a tracker like that and have the woodsmanship to know what you're looking for.
Yeah. So I think the one thing about big bucks that I've noticed, if I actually find one that I can recognize, we have one of the areas that I hunt is it's a high density, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of big deer, right?
Yep.
Between people not shooting mature does way back in, you get a 4 or 5 year old doe, they have a really big track too,
Yep.
compared to everything else that's around it. Not like a mature buck, but it's still a lot bigger.
Yep.
And then you just have everything kind of gets skewed because of the deer density sometimes.
Yep.
One thing that I notice is I might get lucky enough to find a rub that kind of gives a signature away, like either the way he rubs it, maybe there's a tick mark at the top, or there's a specific, like if they're rubbing cedars, only cedars, or
Yeah.
hemlocks or laurels, maybe they pick a specific tree, or they're rubbing at a specific height. Do you notice that pretty often?
Yeah, I can take him an example last May where we were in a new area and found a big community scrape after boots on the ground. And then 100 yards, 150 yards away, we found a big rub line with
Mm,
the same height of about 5 or 6 rubs in about a 60-yard stretch. And they were just gorged out in the middle. Like you could tell he had big, heavy brow tines, and it looked like he had some trash. And it ended up being, one of our main target bucks that we found. He showed up in May. We dropped it on his core area, and he was 8-inch, 9-inch brows and trash coming out his bases. And it was like, that's him, those are
mhm.
his rubs. There's no question about it. So yeah, I feel like when it comes to rubs, if you don't really know exactly what you're looking for, what you're looking at, they can get misconstrued with, oh, it's a big rub, big deer. But I've seen 2.5-year-olds rub on a tree,
Yeah,
where it looks like a big rub. So I think some of that can get overlooked sometimes, or maybe not overlooked, but over
overrated.
perceived. Yeah,
Yeah,
overrated is the word
yeah,
I'm looking for there. So
yeah.
rubs, I don't target as much, I would say, of when I'm trying to find, a place to hunt a big deer and kill a big deer. But it definitely adds a piece to the puzzle, if you can find something that sticks out like that example.
I guess it would be what you're saying is it's valuable if there's something else to make it valuable.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really hunt rub lines. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Yeah, areas that are torn up with rubs, historical rubs that you can see each year get worn out and then
Mm-hmm.
reopened. 100%,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's what you're looking for. But a deer in the rut that's all worked up and stuff, he can rip 4 trees up and make it look amazing, and he's there for 2 days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So here's the big question for the postseason scouting. I one time found a scrape line and I found a few sheds on it, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm going along the scrape line, it kind of stopped and then it shifted. These scrapes looked like they were from either early part of the year or the year before, and they kind of just maybe were opened a little bit, nothing crazy. Then it shifted this way to get to the line of cover.
Yeah.
As I'm following along, I find some other sheds and I find one scrape kind of in the heaviest part of the cover I can find. It's not a massive scrape, but I coined it like the tucked in scrape. We call it the TIS. We're always talking about this spot, right?
Okay.
I ended up killing a 10 pointer there. But my point in asking that is why do you think, is that something that you're looking for with scrapes? Because I didn't find any, it wasn't, it was probably the best scrape there was. It wasn't like a car hood size, but it was
Yep.
deeper than the rest of them. And it was in the heaviest cover. And I couldn't find any more after that. So this was a scrape line. It was maybe like 8 scrapes over an 200-yard stretch. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what you're looking for when you're looking for the scrape to hunt? And I know you guys are pretty big into mock scrapes. Is that something that you're going to duplicate to make your setup and access better?
Yeah, 100%. I think the key to that story there, that situation is that scrapes. Where is it at? It's in the heaviest, densest cover where a big deer feels safe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's a lot of scrapes in the woods when you start putting boots on the ground and really looking and understand scrapes. You tend to find more than you would sometimes expect, I would say. And like in your example, we find a lot of scrapes that,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's 5 or 6, in this scrape line or down this ridge, whatever. And you can tell that they're not being used by the entire deer herd throughout a year. And a lot of times those are in, more open areas where a buck is sliding through in the dark or only goes there every so often. But those ones in that heavy cover where a big deer is going to feel safe and deer in general are just going to feel more comfortable to move in the daylight. I mean, that's what we target, and we're trying to kill. We ain't killing them in the dark. So you got to get to where they're going to be checking those scrapes and comfortable in that area in the daylight. And
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the mock scrape game, we usually, I mean, we don't ever hunt a spot that doesn't have a scrape on it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a community scrape that is lasting and we find and get on it. And it's usually in a situation like that where, yeah, this is where the terrain, the cover, wind advantage puts them here. And there's
Mm-hmm.
usually a scrape there. But if not, and we find all those other aspects of what we know a big buck or believe a big buck will feel comfortable in, then you blow a scrape up right in his face where he has to check it, because he lives there, his historical knowledge of a deer that you find. And if you want to hunt him for, like you said, for access reasons where you can only, yeah, there's a good scrape here, but my access is not going to work, then yeah, you might have to shift 50, 100, 200 yards and put a mock on him and get him to feel comfortable and get him trained while they're growing up to get that scrape. And usually what happens with our mock scrapes is it's a long game. I mean, we build it and then in 2 or 3, 4 years, we don't really have to do much. The deer kind of take it over naturally just because it's in the right spot. It's in the right location, but the access or the wind maybe is more easier or to hunt there for us, then usually the deer will take it over.
So what you're saying about how you find scrapes is perfect. So when you're talking about a mock scrape, okay, you got the access, you found the scrape, your access to that scrape is not good.
Yeah.
And you're saying you need to be 100 to 200 yards away from that. I've tried mock scrapes. I'm terrible at them. However, I did find that scrape because I listened to a podcast that your dad did.
Yeah.
And I ended up killing a deer on that one.
That's
so
awesome.
I wasn't hunting directly on the scrape. I was probably like I said, it's in some real thick cover and
Yeah.
almost like I'm not going to describe it too much, but it's basically like a very tight funnel that this
Yeah.
scrape is on. And I couldn't hunt inside it because you couldn't sit on the ground because you're literally it's very narrow.
Gotcha.
So you couldn't sit on the ground, and there was really no trees to get in that weren't like they all had you would have to hunt in the top of the tree where it's all bush, like you couldn't get in a tree.
Gotcha.
So the way that I ended up hunting it was just hunting on the outside of that funnel and hoping something either rounded out to scent check that scrape on the downwind side or whatever.
Yep.
But if I were to build a mock scrape and I want it to be successful, because like I said, I've tried a few, haven't had a whole lot of luck. What are the ingredients that you need where it maybe cover? Is it terrain? Is it rugged access that you need to get there? But even though you might maybe it's a place you make a whole ton of noise getting into, but the deer's not there when you need to be walking into that spot. What are the ingredients you need to make a mock scrape?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's location based. If you can build the prettiest, best scrape in the world, put all the good scent in it, keep your human scent out of it, all the stuff that comes with building a mock. If it's not in the right spot, you're wasting your damn time. So for a mountain buck, you have to have security cover, plain and simple. And I feel like that goes universal for all whitetails. If a big deer doesn't have security cover, he's probably not gonna access and revisit that scrape frequently in the daylight. Yeah, he might check it once in November in the daylight when he's out cruising, but to have him feel comfortable and to put it in a spot where you're really dropping it in their core area is the key, I think, for getting a big mature buck to access it and feel comfortable on it. If you're not close to his bed and you're not in an area where he feels like he has a wind advantage to access that scrape from his bed, you're out of the game. And so a lot of times the truth is a lot of times you're cutting it really close. From our experience, from my experience, is you're living on the edge a lot of times with access, with wind, because you have to be close.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You just, if you want him there frequently and actually have a chance of getting him killed, you can't be outside of his wheelhouse. You got to be in his wheelhouse where he feels comfortable in the daylight, and he has to feel comfortable with the majority of prevailing winds that he gets living there every day,
Yeah.
And maybe you kill him on that day where it's sort of an off wind, or it's southwest instead of straight west. You know what I'm saying? Where you're just off the edge, you're playing it close. We hunt really high. We try to do our best and put all the chips in our corner that we can with the wind, because the truth is you can't beat a buck's nose. I don't care what you spray on yourself or how many totes you put your clothes in. You can't beat a big mature buck's nose. So, but for the mock scrape thing, I would say number one is location, and that's terrain. A funnel, like you're saying, that naturally funnels deer into a certain area, but then security cover and wind advantage. Those three are vital for having a mock scrape work for you. And then you can't get your human scent in it. I think that's one thing that gets overlooked a lot, is you might be in the perfect location and have all those things stacked up. My access is good. My wind's good. I'm in the security cover. I'm close to his home. I'm close to his bedding area where he feels comfortable. And then you go in there and refresh your scrape every 3 days or a week because you're super excited. And then you get your human scent all over in it. And then he goes in there one time, 40 yards downwind, and smells you, and he ain't going to like it.
So when you're building a mock scrape time of year, are you doing this in the postseason, or are you doing it when deer are making scrapes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think more people are starting to understand that deer scrape damn near year round. They don't scrape the dirt out year round, but
Right.
that licking branch is the key to all scrapes.
Mm-hmm.
That is their telephone booth. That's their
Mm-hmm.
communication center. So I would say like late season, like right now, like we're talking about backtracking and snow and stuff. I'm not building a bunch of scrapes. I'm looking for if I run across a big community scrape where I'm like, holy cow, I need to be here, then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'll overmarket, and run on it. But right now, I mean, we usually start building all of our scrapes when we're shed hunting / scouting in the spring is when we do our big builds on a big mock, April, May, obviously. And when we're summer scouting, we're always trying to find that next spot, that next drainage, that next ridge system, get into that next group of deer.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll build them throughout the spring and summer.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the in-camp field notes, and we talked postseason scouting, the Pottenger way, scrapes, mock scrapes, all the things that you need for part of what you need for a really good postseason scout. So, dude, thanks for coming on this one, and we're going to get right into a full episode right after this.
Awesome.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of In Camp Field Notes with Tyson Pottenger. If you did enjoy it, go back and listen to the Pottenger Method on episode number 40 of In Camp that aired quite a bit of time ago. I think this is airing sometime in March or April. So anyway, if you could, leave me a review and a rating. It really helps the show reach more ears. I so much appreciate you listening week after week, and I'd love for you to share this show. So thanks again. This is In Camp Podcast.